Welcome back to another edition of the weekly Raiderland podcast here on a Monday. Ryan Hyatt with Red Raider Nation's David Collier. We're post-press conference. We won't review a whole lot of that. There wasn't a whole lot going on, really, that you can advance from Saturday night, maybe a few injury updates. But I'm intrigued about Tech going back to the scene of a great slaughter 2 years ago. They weren't ready to play against West Virginia at home. They came back, looked better effort-wise against Oklahoma. This, to me, would be one for the guys that were around 2 years ago. How could you not be ready to go back to TCU and even losing hard on a last-second play at home last year? To me, this game is about emotional effort for the Red Raiders on the road. What do you think?
Oh, without a doubt. And I think, if anything, at least we did see the effort that everybody, fan-wise, wanted to see against Oklahoma coming off of that West Virginia game. They could have just laid down. And, it could have been a lot worse than what it was. So you like to see that they had the effort against Oklahoma. I'm wondering, not to be negative Nancy here, how much of that was fool's gold against that Oklahoma defense and secondary, which if they're not the worst secondary in the Big 12, they're the second worst, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, but at least they showed up. At least they were competing for 4 quarters.
I'll be interested to see how they handle that TCU front seven, who's gotten after a lot of quarterbacks in the Big 12, got to Skylar Howard quite a bit, even though they lost that football game. So I guess there's that little glimmer of hope there. They did get to Skylar Howard, and West Virginia did still win that football game, but West Virginia does still have a good defense.
What did West Virginia do? They continued to run the football. What has Texas Tech not been able to do? Run it. I think that allows TCU to pin their ears back. I would think after getting 5 sacks against Skylar Howard, they've got 30-something, 30-plus on the year now, they absolutely dial up the pressure. This game may hinge, I don't think it's going to be as high-scoring a lot of people think. I think Texas Tech will try to do some things to make Kenny Hill win it, and he might give you some turnovers and some interceptions. He's prone to do that. But I also think this TCU defense, not as good as West Virginia maybe, but maybe the second-best defense you played so far, I think they can cause some disruption.
Yeah, and I think if it is what you're saying and it's not as high-scoring that everybody thinks it is, then I don't think the Red Raiders necessarily have a shot, because that means that front seven and that defensive line is getting to Pat, and Pat isn't as effective as he was against Oklahoma, and that means that Gary Patterson has decided to slow it down a little bit and run the football. And if those two things are happening, I don't think there's any way the Red Raiders can come out with a win.
Yeah, Kyle Hicks against West Virginia, a little over 100 yards, so that they proved they could run. They proved they could do something you couldn't do or wouldn't do against West Virginia. To me, this is a fascinating matchup. Your season doesn't hinge on it. I think when you're where Tech is right now, it's silly to say must-win and season-changing game. But I do think this will be interesting from my standpoint to see what Tech can generate offensively and how they generate it. It's unrealistic, it's unfair to expect Pat Mahomes and that offense to go out and do what they did. I don't care who you're playing, whether OU has a bad pass defense or not. You can't expect NCAA records every week. It just doesn't work that way.
No, but unfortunately, you've gotten to the point where you got to get pretty darn close if you want to come away with a win. And you're at this point, you say it doesn't hinge on one game or another. But I think what's successful for this team at this point in the year is to try to get bowl eligible. I mean, that is a successful season at this point, given where they're at right now.
A long way to it.
Yeah, because if you look at the rest of the schedule, I think that Texas game at home, the fact that it's now an 11 a.m. kickoff is kind of rough if you're a Red Raider fan. But if you look at the rest of the schedule, that's the only home game left on the schedule, and you don't win in Stillwater.
Yeah.
And Ames got a lot tougher the way they've been scoring. And in the Baylor game, that's a toss-up, but Baylor's still one of the better teams in the conference. I mean, you're running out of games to win.
Fans were already complaining about the 11 a.m. start for that game. That's what happens when two teams have 3 wins. If it wasn't Texas, it might not be televised. So that will take away a lot of the vitriol that was in the stands, though, Saturday night against OU, that maybe the team fed off that. There wasn't anything like that against West Virginia. There'll be more with it just being Texas, but it's still going to be, I think, Tech football better have a better mentality going in that game than what they had against the Oklahoma game. I want to talk about the idea of fans becoming numb to numbers. Are we seeing that right now, that they can set offensive records, they can do what they did Saturday night, but the outcome is still the same? You never really felt like Tech was about to take over there, even in the second half when it was a 2-touchdown game. Are the fans now growing numb to the PlayStation stuff, and they're just looking for wins?
Oh, without a doubt. Everybody's growing numb to these numbers. Just go to the post-game press conference, and I know it's all about wins, when it comes down to it. But when you ask the players afterwards, and you know they're going to give this answer anyway, it doesn't matter if we didn't get a win. But the guy just had 800 yards of offense, and there is nothing exciting about it afterwards because it didn't lead to a victory.
And I look around the country, and now the Big 12 is looked at like this circus oddity. That you saw some of the reaction nationally, and they're almost like, well, that's cute. And it's not even real football that's perceived as being played here, and that they discount what Mahomes and Mayfield did because it occurred in a Big 12 game with Big 12 defenses.
The perfect example at the start of a national show Dan Patrick hosts on television and radio, he brought up the fact that, really Lamar Jackson is like the Heisman front runner, and he even said that he watched Texas Tech and Oklahoma play and didn't even reference the fact how many points. And I mean, it wasn't even, hey, maybe we should look at this guy that had 800 yards of offense as the game as a potential Heisman candidate. It wasn't mentioned. It was just, they scored a lot of points because that's what the Big 12 does.
Maybe they need to be like a stat norming deal where you change and adjust all Big 12 stats because you're playing against Big 12 defenses, and like you throw for a yard, you only get credit for like a third of a yard.
Yeah, that would
in
make
a
sense.
Normal conference.
I'm still convinced that the reason that game next week is an 11 a.m. game is because maybe like an ABC will say didn't want it at 2:30 because they know they would blow
Run
right
long on the
into
window.
They would run long on the window and go right into the primetime
Hey,
game.
that is a great point because people talk about how exciting it is and the networks love that. Actually, no. They have tighter windows on satellite time and programming than most people realize. And with these games now going 4.5 hours, the network execs do not like that.
No.
They want a 3.5 hour, basically a 3.5 to a 3 hour, 45-minute window on a game. Anything above that's beyond what they really want. And I wonder if they start looking at the Big 12 going, really, can you speed up some of this junk?
Well, it's not even just the Big 12. This past weekend, the West Virginia TCU game had to be pushed back an extra 15 minutes because of what Lamar Jackson was doing to NC State, because the TCU West Virginia game was in the 2:30 time slot on ABC, and it was pushed back because of the other one. You're watching that game, and it was 44-0 at the half, and that's become a regular occurrence, and it's pushing that one back. So that's going, and I know
the domino effect.
Yeah, it goes into the. I mean, I don't think that obviously if they started at 2:30 on ABC, they would make it to the 7 o'clock primetime time slot, but they would get pretty darn close.
Well, and extending off that from a network standpoint in conferences, all right, one of the reasons why the Pac-12 covets these central time zone teams and why they're going to take some in a couple of years. Let's go back to Cal and Oregon. You know what time that finished up? I think around Central, like 2 a.m. on the overtime game Friday night at Central Time. Nobody saw it anywhere that matters.
Yeah, I did.
They don't want that. Well, you did because
I got home
Yeah.
around that time whenever we left the stadium
True.
for our football game.
All right. All right. We'd love to hear from you guys. Drop us a line in the comment section below. You can share this. Let people know we're out here in Raiderland. We love hearing from you guys. You're the best, and we'll see you soon in Raiderland.